Welcome to another deep dive where we take your suggestions for sources and really try to unpack the key insights so you can get up to speed quickly.
That's right.
Today we're diving into a book with a very intriguing title.
Yeah.
1,000 Ways to Make $1,000 by F.C. Minaker.
That's a lot of ways.
Right. 1,000.
Yeah.
Our main sources for this deep dive are, I guess, primarily the audiobook transcripts, which are available on YouTube.
Okay.
You can find them from Free Audiobooks Library, and also the Fibrary.
Interesting.
And really what we're trying to do today is explore all these diverse and sometimes pretty unconventional methods that are suggested in this book, which of course was published quite a while ago in a different era.
Right.
And we're going to see what still resonates today, maybe offer some new perspectives for you, the listener.
Sure.
Some ideas might seem, they might seem a little dated.
Of course.
But who knows, maybe some of them will spark some unexpected inspiration.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's unpack this. 1,000 ways. That's a huge number.
It is.
It really makes you think about like the entrepreneurial spirit of the time.
I know.
So what were some of the initial examples of making money that caught your attention?
Well, one of the first stories that really stood out to me was this guy, Winston, who was selling radios.
Okay.
And what's interesting here is not just that he was selling a relatively new technology, but how he approached it.
Okay.
Like, he didn't just try to offload radios on anyone. He focused on showing the owners of small businesses, like small hotels, barbershops, cigar stores, and billiard halls, places like that.
Okay.
How having a radio could attract more customers
Right.
and ultimately help them make more money.
It's all about that value proposition.
It is. He connected the radio first as a demonstration
Oh, interesting.
to really show them how it could benefit their customer.
So it wasn't even about the gadget itself. It was really about the benefit it offered.
Exactly.
That end user.
The end user.
And his agent model, too, essentially empowering those people in the establishments to sell on his behalf.
Uh-huh.
And they would get a commission based on, a few boards a month.
Wow.
But what's really crazy is the low initial investment.
Yeah.
Only $12 for that first radio.
That's amazing.
That's a remarkably accessible entry point for so many people.
It is.
And the fact that he made over $1,000 in just 3 months, that really underscores how effective that approach was.
Incredible.
So the key insight here for you is, don't just sell a product.
Right.
You really got to demonstrate that value proposition to the customer's end user.
Yeah, you have to show them how it will benefit them.
Exactly.
From their business.
And then there was J.W. Hawkins.
Oh, tell me about him.
Who, he had kind of a setback.
Uh-oh.
He lost his wholesale shoe territory.
Oh.
But he was really smart about it.
Oh, okay.
He leveraged his knowledge of the shoe business.
You already had that.
Right. To launch a direct-to-wear sales model.
So smart.
It just shows you that existing skills and industry knowledge can be so valuable for creating new opportunities.
Yeah.
Especially after something like a setback.
Yeah, you can pivot.
It really is all about resilience and resourcefulness.
It is.
Instead of getting discouraged, he thought, okay, what skills do I have?
Right.
What do I know that I can apply in a new way?
Yeah.
And in 12 weeks, he made over $1,000 in commissions.
Wow.
It's amazing.
That is amazing.
So it really emphasizes that value of transferable skills, don't you think?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
And if we look at the bigger picture here,
Yeah.
both Winston and Hawkins figured out a direct pathway to their customers,
Right.
minimizing overhead in different ways.
Yeah.
Okay, let's talk about Horner and his premium sales strategy in Wisconsin.
Oh, yeah. He was interesting.
This one is pretty clever.
It is.
He used items like clocks and silverware and premiums.
What's that?
It's kind of an early form of what we now call a loyalty program.
Oh, okay.
Designed to keep customers coming back.
Interesting.
And his approach was really methodical. He would make like 20 store calls a day.
Wow.
Across different towns, Watertown, Madison, Racine.
Yeah.
But he would only make deals with one store of each type in each town.
Oh, that's clever.
So strategic.
Yeah.
He really understood market saturation and competitive advantage.
He
was ahead of his time.
Yeah.
What's really important here is that he recognized early on that retaining customers is just as important as getting new ones.
Oh, for sure.
And the premiums were that ongoing incentive to keep people coming back.
Makes sense.
And think about the sheer variety of businesses that could use these premiums.
Like what?
Filling stations, drugstores, small department stores. It's really a broad concept.
Right, it is.
And he often didn't even need any upfront capital because he would work directly with the premium suppliers.
So resourceful.
It's a great takeaway for anyone listening,
Yeah.
Think about how you can add value for your customers in a way that fosters loyalty.
Keep them coming back for more.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Find those creative ways to add value that go beyond the initial transaction.
Yeah.
Okay, now let's get into direct sales.
Oh, yeah.
That real hustle mentality.
Uh-huh.
This story of Frank Dupree's selling fire extinguishers, this one really stood out.
Why is that?
Well, at first, his sales were really low.
Really?
Yeah, and it just shows you how important it is to target the right customers.
Oh, okay.
He wasn't successful until he realized he was going after the wrong people. But then he had this pivotal shift.
What happened?
He started focusing on businesses that had a real need for fire extinguishers,
That makes sense.
like factories, warehouses, garages.
Oh, yeah, they would need those.
Right.
Uh-huh.
And he was really smart about it.
How so?
He used the classified directory to identify these businesses.
Interesting.
It's all about knowing your ideal customer and putting in the effort.
Absolutely.
He was making 25 calls a day
Oh.
and averaging 12 sales.
That's a...
Yeah, and in 1 week, he earned over $500.
That's incredible.
And he ended up making over $1,000 in 6 weeks.
So he hit his goal.
Exactly.
Wow.
And here's another key detail.
What's that?
The fire extinguishers he sold had insurance underwriter approval.
Oh, okay.
So that added this layer of credibility.
Yeah.
And it meant that the customers could potentially get lower insurance premiums.
Oh, that's a good selling point.
Right. And on top of that, it was really easy to become a salesperson in this field.
Really?
So it really opened up the opportunity for a lot of people.
Interesting.
Now let's talk about Richie and his mending fluid.
Okay.
This guy was making 67 calls a day.
67.
67. That's a lot of calls.
That's a lot of hustle.
It is. And he didn't need much money to get started.
Oh, okay.
But the real challenge was overcoming that no money objection.
Yeah, how did he do that?
He would offer a live demonstration
Oh, smart.
right on the spot,
Wow.
often using the prospect's own silk stockings to show how effective the product was.
That's a good way to do it.
People can see it with their own eyes.
Right. Tangible proof.
Exactly.
Okay, so now let's switch gears a bit.
Yeah.
And talk about creating and selling unique products.
Love it. Let's do it.
Have you heard of the Tasdale sisters?
I don't think so.
They had this really interesting business selling fancy pillows.
Fancy pillows.
Yeah.
Okay.
What's really fascinating is that they took something they had a lot of,
Go with that.
leftover fabrics,
Okay.
combined it with their desire to travel, and turned it into a business.
That's amazing.
They made unique designs using all sorts of materials,
Yeah.
ribbons, chintz, linen, lace, velvet.
Wow. Sounds fancy.
Yeah. And they started by selling their pillows during Christmas through rented window space.
Oh, interesting. So they knew how to capitalize on seasonal demand,
Yeah.
and eventually they even opened a temporary store.
Wow.
And here's a really important takeaway.
Okay.
When you're selling handmade goods,
Yeah.
the perceived value can often justify higher prices, especially if you focus on unique designs and high quality.
That makes sense.
And they charge good prices.
Good for them.
And people really appreciated the artistry and handwork.
Yeah.
So it really is a key lesson for anyone selling their creations.
It is.
And eventually they expanded their business into a shop that sold other home decor items as well.
Oh, nice.
They were really smart about leveraging their existing customer base.
For sure.
They found their niche and they ran with it.
Yeah.
Okay, now let's talk about George Kona.
Okay.
He made miniature antique furniture.
Miniature antique furniture.
No, it's pretty cool, right?
Which is cool.
He had this deep knowledge of period furniture.
Huh.
And his pieces were so detailed, they were more like little works of art.
Wow.
They weren't just doll furniture, they were collectibles.
That's amazing.
And he actually started doing this as a hobby.
Really?
Yeah, when he was going through some tough times.
Oh, wow.
And eventually it turned into a successful business.
That's great.
And he even started making custom doll houses.
Wow.
It just goes to show you how a specialized skill and a passion can find a market,
Yeah,
even if it's a niche market.
for sure.
And he charged a lot more for his miniatures than you would pay for regular doll furniture,
I bet.
because he was creating something truly unique and valuable.
Absolutely.
And the book also talks about a bunch of other craft-based opportunities.
Like what?
Things like whittling, cement work, paper crafts, oilcloth items, knitted rugs, all sorts of things.
Cool.
And the key takeaway here is that you really have to understand market preferences and needs.
Right.
It mentions that streamlined designs were popular at the time,
Okay.
but there's also still an interest in colonial styles.
Interesting.
So you have to stay on top of trends.
For sure.
You have to make things that people want.
Absolutely.
Okay, let's move on to service-based opportunities.
Yeah.
There's this guy, Sullivan, who sold collection systems to businesses.
Collection system.
Yeah, like helping businesses get paid by their customers,
Bro,
especially during times when credit was tight.
makes sense.
And he was really successful.
How so?
He was closing 6 out of 10 calls.
Wow, that's a great rate.
It is. And even though his interviews were pretty long,
Really?
people could see the value in what he was offering.
That's awesome.
And then there's Gertie Chrysler in New York.
Okay.
He started this flower a day service.
A flower a day.
Yeah, it was a subscription service.
Oh, wow.
So people would get a fresh flower delivered to them every day.
That's so nice.
Right. And he had 1,000 customers.
Wow, that's a lot of flowers.
It is. He had to start working early in the morning to get all the deliveries done.
I bet.
And you know what's really interesting?
What?
While delivering flowers every day might not be as common now,
Yeah.
the idea of a subscription model is still huge.
Oh, yeah, especially with online services.
It's all about offering something consistently
Right.
in a way that's accessible and affordable.
Yeah.
And then there's Overhaul.
Okay.
He offered a store delivery service.
Interesting.
And this is actually still pretty relevant today.
How so?
Well, in smaller towns,
Yeah.
a lot of big retailers have cut back on their delivery options.
Yeah.
So there's this gap in the market.
Interesting.
And that's where Overhaul service comes in.
That's a great example of finding a need and filling it.
Exactly.
And there's Chapin.
What did he do?
He offered an electrical maintenance service specifically for small manufacturers.
Oh, interesting.
So he was really specialized.
He was.
And he would offer these regular, affordable maintenance contracts.
That's smart.
It was predictable income for him,
Mm-hmm.
and it helped his clients avoid costly breakdowns.
So it was a win-win.
Exactly.
Okay, now let's dive into some of these unexpected niches that the book talks about.
Okay.
There's Mrs. Rochester.
What did she do?
She had this handkerchief business.
A handkerchief business.
I know, it sounds kind of random.
It does.
But she started by just making handkerchiefs for her friends.
Oh,
And then it just kind of blew up from there.
wow.
She ended up selling her handkerchiefs in department stores.
Really?
Yeah, and even internationally.
That's incredible.
And it all started because she focused on quality.
Makes sense.
She used materials she liked
Mm-hmm.
and priced accordingly.
Okay.
And word of mouth really helped her business grow.
It's amazing what word of mouth can do.
It is.
So then what happened?
As demand increased, she started selling through stores.
Smart.
And she even opened a factory in China
Wow.
back in 1934.
That's pretty impressive.
She was a real go-getter.
She was.
Okay, now there's Lou Garland.
Okay.
He was a baseball pitcher.
Oh, wow.
And he would take broken baseball bats
Okay.
and turn them into lamps.
Lamps.
Yeah, and he would get autographs on the shades.
That's a cool idea.
It is. It's like a perfect example of creative repurposing.
Yeah.
And then there's the Myers.
What did they do?
They had a pie bakery.
Oh, pie.
And their whole philosophy was to do one thing really well. And that thing was pie.
Pie.
And they would sell their pies to hotels, restaurants, and individuals.
Nice.
And they were really successful because there weren't a lot of good pie bakers around.
Really?
That's what the book says.
Interesting.
Shows you how even basic needs can be underserved.
Yeah.
And then there's Ruth G. Jones.
Okay.
She had a felt work business.
Felt work.
Yeah.
What's that?
She would customize sports uniforms.
Oh, cool.
And she was the only one doing it in San Antonio.
Wow.
So she had a captive market.
She did.
And she didn't even need a lot of money to get started.
Nice.
Okay. And there's this New England widow.
Okay.
She had this food specialty business.
What kind of food?
She would make coffee cake, donuts, nut bread.
Sounds delicious.
Yeah, and she would also cater.
Oh, wow.
And her business was built entirely on word of mouth.
That's great.
And she would include recipe cards with her baked goods.
That's a nice touch.
Yeah, it's a really personal touch that people appreciated. It's all about understanding your local market
For sure.
and building those personal connections.
Yeah.
Okay, let's move on to some examples of leveraging existing assets.
Okay.
There's Elcourt.
What did he do?
He would rebuild and resell used Model T Fords.
Oh, Model Ts.
Yeah, obviously that particular car model isn't around anymore,
Right.
but the underlying principle is still relevant.
Oh, how so?
It's all about identifying things that are readily available, maybe underutilized,
Yeah.
and finding a new purpose for them.
Like recycling?
Sort of.
Okay.
But more about finding a new market.
Got it.
The secondhand market is huge these days.
It is.
There are so many online marketplaces for furniture, electronics, clothing.
It's amazing.
There are tons of opportunities out there.
Yeah.
And then there's the waffles.
The waffles.
Yeah, they sold moth tabs.
Moth tabs.
And they had to really persevere to overcome those no money objections.
Yeah, sometimes you have to really push to get your product out there.
You do.
It's not always easy.
And then there's Clarence B. Travis.
What about him?
He sold shirts,
Okay.
but he was really good at building relationships with his customers.
That's important,
It is.
especially in sales.
He didn't just make a sales call and move on.
Right.
He really took the time to get to know people.
That's a good approach,
It is.
especially if you're doing direct sales.
And he also addressed negative experiences that people had with other salespeople.
Oh,
So he was really building trust.
Makes sense.
Okay, and then there's this inventor who sold self-lighting cigarette cases.
Self-lighting cigarette cases.
Yeah.
Wow.
And he specifically sold them at gas stations.
That's smart.
Right. He knew his target market,
Yeah.
people who smoked and drove cars.
Makes sense.
And then there's Mrs. Widow Royden.
Okay.
She made these muslin lamps.
Muslim lambs.
Yeah, it started as a school project,
Oh, wow.
but it turned into a big business.
Really?
Yeah, she ended up getting a contract with Saxon Company. Sometimes the most unexpected things can become successful.
Yeah.
Okay, let's move on to roadside business ventures.
Okay.
There's Mrs. Gaston.
What does she do?
She had a bait selling stand.
Bait.
Yeah, for fishing.
Oh,
She knew there was a demand for bait,
that makes sense.
especially during fishing season.
Right.
And then there's Galway and Sheffield.
Okay.
They started a golf driving range.
Oh, cool.
They didn't have a lot of money,
Okay.
so they rented the land,
Smart.
and to get people interested,
Mm-hmm.
they offered free practice swings.
Oh, that's clever.
They were really resourceful.
They were.
And then there's Stevens.
Okay.
He had a roadside inn,
Okay.
and he didn't just offer basic food.
What else did he have?
He had barbecued sandwiches
Yum.
and a dance floor,
Wow.
and he kept his prices low.
Smart.
So it was a really attractive stop for travelers.
For sure.
And then there's this hardware merchant.
Okay.
He would sell canaries at cost
At cost.
Yeah.
Why would he do that?
to get people into his store.
Oh, I see.
He knew that if people came in to buy a canary,
Uh-huh.
they might also buy a bird cage.
Right.
Or bird seed.
Or other things.
Exactly. It's a really clever strategy.
It was.
And then there's this family in Blanco, Illinois.
Okay.
They would sell their farm products directly to customers.
Interesting.
They had these barn stores.
Barn stores.
Yeah, and they would use the telephone to contact customers.
Oh, that's a great way to reach people.
It was.
Especially back then.
Right. It was an early form of direct-to-consumer marketing.
Cool.
The book also talks about mail-order businesses.
Oh, yeah.
They can be pretty complex,
Yeah.
but also potentially very profitable.
For sure.
And then there's Mrs. Murphy.
What does she do?
She had a rental library.
Oh, cool.
She didn't need much money to get started.
Okay.
Just a collection of books.
Right.
And she charged membership and rental fees.
Makes sense.
And she could run the library from her home
Nice.
or a shared space.
Yeah.
So it was a low overhead business.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then there's this idea of using returnable containers.
What do you mean?
Like if you're selling cookies,
Yeah.
you could sell them in a nice tin
Okay.
that people can bring back to get refilled.
Interesting.
It's a way to encourage repeat business
Yeah.
and build customer loyalty.
Makes sense.
Okay, let's talk about some of the ways people turn their skills and hobbies into income.
That's good.
There's Mrs. Fox.
Okay.
She had a mink ranch.
Mink ranch.
Yeah,
Wow.
it required a lot of specialized knowledge
I bet.
and a decent amount of money to get started.
Okay.
But she could make money selling breeding stock.
Oh, interesting.
And she even published some books about mink ranching.
Oh.
And then there's Robert Fern Norbeck.
Oh.
He had a goat dairy.
A goat dairy.
Yeah. And he focused on quality over quantity.
That's a good philosophy.
And then there's this guy who worked as a laundry driver.
Okay.
But on the side, he bred and sold English setters and Cocker Spaniels.
Wow, that's cool.
And it was a really profitable side hustle.
Nice.
And then there's Blanche Crabble.
What did she do?
She had a rabbit wool business.
Rabbit wool.
Yeah. Instead of just selling pelts,
Okay.
she would collect the wool and sell that.
That's smart.
And then there's Mrs. Orman.
Okay.
She bred lovebirds.
Lovebirds.
They're really popular pets.
Oh, okay.
And she made a good profit from selling them.
Nice.
And then there's Eugene C. Sherman.
Okay.
He had a goldfish farm.
Goldfish.
He actually started it to use the goldfish as premiums.
Oh, interesting.
But then he found a wider market for them.
Wow.
And then there's the idea of starting a dog kennel.
Okay.
You don't need a ton of money to get started.
Really?
And you can use dog shows as a marketing tool.
Oh, smart.
And then there's Lewin.
Okay.
He grew mushrooms.
Mushrooms.
Yeah, in his cellar.
Wow.
And then there's Mr. Wolf.
What did he do?
He put up a farm sign
A farm sign.
to let people know what he was selling.
Oh, okay.
Livestock, produce, things like that.
Makes sense.
It was a simple but effective way to advertise.
Yeah.
And, of course, there's always inventing and patenting.
Right.
That's a classic way to create a unique business.
It is.
Okay, let's talk about O.D. Dinsdale.
What did he do?
He started out whittling,
Whittling.
but then he ended up opening a design studio.
Wow. That's quite a jump.
It is.
From whittling to design.
And then there's this guy who made metal polish.
Okay.
He really emphasized the importance of having a good trade name.
That's important.
It is.
For branding.
And he made sure his instructions were clear and easy to follow.
That's important too.
And he had a safe and effective formula.
That's the most important thing.
It is.
You got to have a good product.
And then there's Mrs. Radin again.
Oh, the muslin lamb lady?
Yeah, her toy business was really an accident.
How so?
It started with that school project.
Right.
And then it just took off from there.
Sometimes the best things happen by chance.
They do.
Yeah.
Okay, and then there's Bell Boney.
Okay.
He had an airplane salvage business.
Airplane salvage?
Yeah, he would buy crashed airplanes
Wow.
and sell the parts.
Interesting.
And then there's J.M. Deeds.
What did he do?
He organized archery clubs.
Archery clubs.
He was really good at archery as a kid,
Oh, cool.
and he wanted to share his passion with others.
That's great.
And he built a whole community around archery.
That's awesome.
And then there's Freddie Bear.
Okay.
He had a ghostwriting bureau.
Ghostwriting.
Yeah.
Cool.
And then there's Jack Frost.
Okay.
He knew a lot about antique firearms,
Mm.
and he ended up working at a hobby shop.
Nice.
And then there's Mr. Preciado.
What'd he do?
He had this auto travel bureau.
Our travel bureau?
Yeah, he would match drivers with passengers.
Oh, like a ride-sharing service?
Kinda.
Wow, that's ahead of its time.
It is.
Yeah.
And then there's the Sullivan Brothers.
Okay.
They had a circulating library.
Okay. But they would deliver the books to office workers.
Oh, that's convenient.
It was,
Well,
they were catering to a specific demographic.
They were.
So we've covered a lot of ground here.
We have.
And it's amazing to see the sheer variety of ideas that were presented in this book.
I know, it's really inspiring.
It is. And you know what?
What?
Even though the world has changed so much since this book was published,
Yeah.
the fundamental principles are still relevant.
Oh, absolutely.
It's all about identifying a need, leveraging